Good afternoon, everyone. This is Frank Donaldson, and would like to welcome you to class number 9 here on this Feast of the Immaculate Conception. It is a special day down here in South Louisiana. Just wanted to let you know that as I'm presenting this from our log cabin office in Pearl River, Louisiana, and believe it or not, it is snowing outside. This area gets snow about once every 5 or 10 years, and it's been snowing for the past 2 hours. Even have a little accumulation on the ground, which is quite remarkable. Everybody down here, the main thing you don't want to do when it happens here in this neck of the woods is you don't want to get in your car and go out, because although I do a lot of driving in the snow with clients up in the Northeast and the Midwest, I guarantee you people in this area of the country, in South Louisiana especially, do not know how to drive in snow. So if you want to see a circus, just go walk outside and take a look at what's going on the highways and byways. Anyway, welcome. It's good to have you with us here on this class number 9. And as we said before, on this Feast of the Immaculate Conception, it's great to be able to share with you the second to last class of our course. So let's begin as we always do. Let us pray through the prayers of the sinless Virgin Mary. God will free us from our sins. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father, you prepared the Virgin Mary to be the worthy mother of your Son. You let her share beforehand in the salvation Christ would bring by his death, and you kept her sinless from the first moment of her conception. Help us by her prayers to live in your presence without sin. We ask this through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. So once again, welcome. And as we know, this is going to be a class that's going to concentrate on really two things, primarily the capital campaign concept, and also a little bit dealing with planned and deferred giving, and even talk a little bit about memorial giving as we move on forward. As we always do, just kind of calling to mind the different areas that we have covered through this course. We have one class left on the 21st of December. And as we had indicated to you in a recent email, there is a final exam project, and that final exam project has been sent to you. It is also on one of the slides at the end of this particular class. And as we have added to that, the final exam project is due back here into our office by the last day of the year. So you still have time. I know this is a busy time. There will be no homework between this class and the last class on the 10th. The only homework is the final exam. And so just please keep that in mind. There's nothing you have to get into us between now and the next class. We realize it's a busy time, a lot of things that are going on, and we want to respect that. So as we look at it, though, I do think it's important that we are getting just a great deal of wonderful input from all of you in regards to homework assignments. If you remember the last class, we talked about listing the ways that you use social media, describe your culture of giving, and if you were going to move forward in creating that strategic plan for development, which we covered at the last class, what would be the major 3 challenges? So as always, I'd like to share with you. I'm just going to start out in no particular order of these 1, 2, or 3, but here is I tried to select the challenges on the challenge part at number 3, things that we heard from a lot of people. And I think that becomes really key, is that many of you face similar challenges, obviously. Here's one from a school that says 3 challenges. How can we get everyone on the same page with what advancement and development mean and how it can benefit our school? Number 2, how can we continue to try and get our priests and churches involved in our school for students? Number 3, how can we put together a group of individuals who will see this new advancement development process through the first 2 to 3 years and actually stick with it? So, once again, as we look at those particular challenges, I think they're key. Here's another school with challenges. How can we stop with so many fundraising efforts and events and truly change the culture of giving when the core team is largely driven, quote unquote core team is largely driven by the PTO? Next challenge, how can we educate parents and distinguish the differences between development and PTO fundraising. Next challenge, how can we locate and better engage the alum base of our school? Here's a one that deals with the culture of giving, and this was one that I found was kind of similar to what I was hearing with others, and so I think that's why I kind of mentioned it. But in terms of describing your culture of giving, our school is somewhere between the basic and the intermediate cultures. Much of what we do is quote unquote because we have always done it that way, and we are slow to change. But we are moving toward more personal invitations and emphasizing involvement as a way of giving. We are working to consistently thank our donors on more than one level, with the notes coming from not only the principal, but also from people working in advancement development and also from our student body. Here's one where we talk about culture of giving. I would have to say we're somewhere between a level 2 and a level 3. We currently have a plan in place as to when and how we will initiate our annual appeal. We also have a solid database that is kept up fairly well. We do send out a large quantity of asks, which is rather costly, and the return is minimal, and usually the donors are recurring. Face-to-face meetings are basically non-existent. We do things today very similarly to what has been done in the past. And so, once again, as we look at this, being able to take a look at what we're learning in this class. In terms of social media, this school seemed to be similar to others. Facebook is focused on alumni and news stories, actual stories we want to communicate more than a few words. Twitter is mostly used for athletics and real-time updates. Instagram is posted to several times a day, showing what is going on at the school in a visual way, from classrooms to the arts to the service to sports. And LinkedIn is being used for connections with alumni. Here's a school that says, we have moved from a level 2 to a level 3 with our culture of giving. We have been quote unquote stuck on some parts of level 2 for many years. Our culture of creating a community with existing donors, but we have not been great about getting new donors and focusing on that one-on-one personalization. The history of the school was always to give back to our students. And so changing that culture to one of students giving back to the school has been quite a challenge. Here's a school that shares these 3 challenges in number 3. How can we engage more people in our enrollment management efforts? Number 2, how can we personally reach out and communicate with each of our school families 4 times per year? Number 3, how can we better educate our parents on what it actually costs to educate each and every student in our Catholic school? Another school, the 3 challenges. How can we re-engage the young generations, such as those between the ages of 25 and 50, when they have one or more colleges and universities that they feel more inclined to support? Number 2, how can we increase faculty and parent engagement when it comes to communication? And number 3, how can we get our alum parents to stay involved and continue supporting our school after their youngest or last child has graduated? And once again, I think that becomes really key. There's one, too, that I just want to read. This comes from a school, actually, that we worked with. And I really like what they say in regards to that culture. And so in terms of that, this particular school says, I would say we do invite gifts of support via face-to-face interaction and plan to build upon this with our continued fundraising efforts also. Here's the sentence that I think is really valuable. We seek to learn what the donor appreciates about the school, and we attempt to thank the donor in the manner that they desire, not just to get a thank you out the door. I think that's really important, really important. That definitely shows that there is a move, toward that highest level in terms of that culture of giving. And I think that becomes important for us to realize. This particular Class 9 is going to greatly concentrate on this capital campaign piece. Let me share just with you very quickly where I'm going to be coming from with this. We've recently completed a couple of campaigns very successfully. One is St. Ursula Academy in Cincinnati, Ohio. The other is St. Michael High School down in the Archdiocese of Mobile. We are in the process of organizing and doing the feasibility on a number of campaigns. One is at Cecina Memorial High School in Indianapolis. Another is a parish and school here in New Orleans Diocese. Another is a parish without a school in Springboro, Ohio, St. Mary, the Assumption Parish. And then there is a very large 5,000 family plus parish without a school in Alpharetta, Georgia, St. Thomas Aquinas. And so we're in the process of organization and feasibility and with some of those. And then we are in the middle right now of 3 campaigns that are really going well. One is at Jesuit High School here in New Orleans. One is with a high school at Mount DeSales Academy in Baltimore, Maryland. And the other is a parish down in Gulf Shores, Alabama at Our Lady of the Gulf. I mention this because in putting together my comments and my presentation for today, I'm going to call upon some of these experiences. And granted, we have some very generic steps, but I'd like to share with you experiences with these particular, as you can see. I just listed 9 or 10 different campaigns, and I'd like to share some of those experiences with you because they really have gone well. They've done, especially in the prep stages, they've done what they need to do. They didn't approach a capital campaign as just give me the money. They approached a capital campaign as how can we build community? How can we invite prayer? How can we invite that whole idea of service? And obviously, how can we invite the financial participation? So as we look at a capital campaign, let's just talk about it here. When you are ready to move forward on a capital campaign, we always say, let's look at a high level first. Let's understand that there are 5 phases. Now, these are the 5 phases we use. Phase 1 is what we call exploration, discovery, feasibility. Now, some just call it feasibility, and they call it feasibility because we need a feasibility study. Well, we use exploration, discovery, feasibility because we think it is important for the school to really explore what is needed. And we're going to look at a chart in just a minute that'll show you what I'm talking about. But explore what is needed. Is this going to be a campaign that's going to try to build endowment? Is this a campaign that's going to address facilities? Is this a campaign that's going to address debt reduction? And so that the school leadership, meaning the board, the administration, and others, need to explore what is it that you are seeking to fund. And then the next step is you need to discover attitudes. What are the attitudes of your various constituent bases about that, what you're presenting? And then lastly, you need to conduct, and all of this is part of the feasibility, but you need to test the feasibility, meaning that you're going to invite people to be interviewed. One of the things that I think is important for you to take a look at early on is whether or not you're going to use outside counsel. And of course, in terms of that, there are pros and there are cons. I always have said to take a look at what others around you have done, take a look at your past history, take a look at what diocesan guidelines share, and once again, how valuable is it for you to use third-party objective? That becomes really something that you have to decide internally. So in the beginning, I think as you move into this, the only thing that I would strongly suggest is I often will have someone that will call us and ask us, do we need to do a feasibility study? And of course, our answer is I don't know how you could actually do a campaign without a feasibility study. I don't know how you would do that. And I'll explain that in more detail in just a minute, because the feasibility study, really gives you information that is so valuable in moving forward with the campaign. So phase 1, exploration, discovery, feasibility. Phase 2, organization of the campaign. Phase 3, the silent phase, called the pace setter phase. Phase 4, the public phase of the campaign. And Phase 5, we just call it Operation Homestretch. Now, these 5 phases are applicable to whether or not you are an elementary school, whether you're a secondary school, whether you're a parochial school, whether you're a pre-K through 12 school. These are the 5 phases of a capital campaign. But let's dive into this deeper, okay? On the screen is what we call a traffic light process. And we find that this becomes important. I don't know why the traffic light is not on number 1, but you can see barely the number 1 there. Maybe the transferring of this visual onto this slide, but I apologize for that. Let's look at this carefully, okay? When you are thinking, and that was why I asked the question after the last class, you know, where are you and you're thinking about a capital campaign? And a number of you said, we're thinking about one. So that's why I'm really excited that we can have this class, and hopefully what we're going to share with you will be able to help you in terms of that. So as you think about a capital campaign, what is it that really needs to be in place? Well, when we look at a capital campaign readiness piece with a Catholic school, we always ask questions like this. We'll say, is the mission of that school and the vision of where it wants to go, is that clear? You know, do they know their wow? Do they know their place in the marketplace? Do they understand their position in the marketplace? You know, is there a clear case? And what we mean by that is what you're planning to raise the money for, those are what we call the case points. Are those case points clear? Okay, are they clear? For example, in one feasibility study that we are completing, in fact, I'm actually writing the feasibility study this weekend to present it to this particular school and parish. It's a parish with an elementary school. They have 4 case points, okay? They're testing 4 case points in the marketplace. One case point is the modernization of all of their classrooms. Now, they have bullet points under all of that, but I'm just giving you the broad brush stroke. The second is to build a multi-purpose building for the parish and the school, which would include a gym. The third would be to do some renovations to the church, and the main thing there is to build the narthex gathering space for the church. And the fourth is early childhood center. So, you know, with these 4 case points, they were very clear. And basically these 4 case points grew out of strategic planning that involved school parents and parishioners and leadership groups and the like. So we always ask that question. Is it a very clear case? Okay, is it a very clear case? Are the attitudes proactive? In other words, are we dealing with positive attitudes? Is the leadership effective? Did it grow out of long-range planning? Are there viable prospects? Are there people that really have financially supported the school in the past? Is there successful annual giving? Okay, is there success? For example, I was visiting several weeks ago. I was invited to sit down with a principal of a Catholic high school. And this principal wanted to move forward and say, you know, we really need to move forward and organize a campaign. And I said, well, have you done a feasibility study? No, we haven't. I said, how much are you trying to raise? And so, you know, 2 red flags went up for me with the answer. The first answer was, we're trying to raise $5 million for debt reduction. And the second answer was, when I asked the question, was, how much are you presently raising as a high school in your annual giving drive? And the answer was approximately $40,000. So the red flags, obviously, that went up were, number 1, debt reduction and operational budget money, you know, are 2 of the hardest kind of monies to raise. Because with debt reduction, many donors say, I'm not responsible for that debt. And then with operational budget money, you know, people say, well, why don't you just raise the tuition, or why can't you budget your, balance your budget? So those are very, but when I heard that the goal $5 million, and yet only $40 million or thereabout in the annual giving, obviously I cannot, mesh those two very successfully unless there's some other major gift work that's going on that I was not aware of. So we want to make sure there's successful annual giving. We want to make sure that the database is clean and relevant, good communications and publications. The campaign is seen as a means and not the end. And also the campaign is seen as a way to evangelize and build community. Let me give you an example of that one too. Last night, I was down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and very nice little parish down there. If you've been to Gulf Shores, they have a Catholic parish called Our Lady of the Gulf. And they're going to launch a $1.3 million capital campaign. The feasibility study indicated positive signs, and so they're ready to move forward in doing this. And so we're in the process of organizing the campaign. Well, last night we were looking at what we call the pace setter divisions, which we'll talk about in a minute. And those pace setter divisions are special, lead, major, and leadership. Special gift division was for those donors $100,000 and above over 5 years, so $20,000 a year every year for 5 years and above. So the lead gift division is between $25,000 and $100,000. Major gift division is between $10,000 and $25,000, and leadership is for the leaders of the parish council, the finance council, and ministry leaders. So those are the 4 divisions of the pace setter component. So at this meeting last night, they had a gentleman who was one of the chairs of the major gift division. Now, the major gift division had 110 families in it. These are families that have been identified as having the financial capability based upon past giving and feasibility study and survey. They have the capability of giving a gift from $10,000 to $25,000 over a 5-year period. So if they gave $2,000 a year every year for 5 years, that's the $10,000. So when I got there and we began discussing, the chair said, well, we've already identified 30 people out of the 110, and we're going to have 3 receptions, and basically we've got 10 families coming to each of those receptions. And so my response was, that sounds great. I said, what are you going to do about the other 80 families? And his response was, well, we thought we would just put something in the mail to them. I said, well, wait a minute. I said, time out. I said, I think what you're doing with those 30 families is outstanding. He says, oh yeah, we're excited about that because we know these 30 families. I said, let's see if we can shift our culture thinking here. I said, let's see if we can shift some gears. I said, when the campaign is over and done with, what would you say in terms of it being successful? He said, well, success would be defined by the fact we've raised $1.3 million or more. I said, okay, I agree with that. I said, but let me take it one step further. I said, success for me, as the person looking from the outside in, I said, success for me would be that we have raised the $1.3 million. However, success would also mean to me that we have expanded our base of people that have given gifts of prayer, service, and money, and that we have introduced people who have not known each other through receptions and visits and things of this nature, and we have used the campaign as a wonderful way to evangelize and build our community, and therefore increase our involvement and engagement rate here at Our Lady of the Gulf by 10 to 15%, and that involvement rate has nothing to do with money. It has all to do with involvement in this faith community. There was silence. And then this gentleman, really sharp guy, said, I've never looked at it that way. I said, well, I'm just inviting you to please look at it that way, because that's what a Catholic capital campaign can do in a parish and an elementary school and a secondary school and a pre-K through 12 school. That's what it can do. When done correctly, that's what it can do. You can tell I come on strong on that piece, and after 8 classes, you should know that I would. Because a capital campaign is not just about the money. The capital campaign is a wonderful, probably the best opportunity you have to engage people. And if you've got a clear case, clear vision, clear mission, good leadership, got all these things on the prerequisites and beliefs, you're driven by these things in the top right-hand corner, then the first step is let's put that steering committee or the core team or whatever you want to call that group, let's get that group in place. Let's make sure they understand the steps. Let's make sure that there's a readiness level, and let's turn that first light green, okay, by getting that group in place. Let's turn the second light green by that steering committee. I'm just going to call them a steering committee from now on. By getting that steering committee, understanding and agreeing upon the major menu items. When the light turned green for Our Lady Perpetual Help in Parish and School, when it turned green was when the steering committee said, okay, based upon our discussions and based upon strategic planning and based upon all that's gone on before this, we are going to go out and invite people to consider, okay, to see if we're on track, modernizing our elementary school classrooms, building a multi-purpose building for our parish and school, renovating our church, and definitely doing something about our early childhood center, making it for 2, 3, 4-year-olds. Okay? So that light went green. The light number 3 is the longest light of them all in this first part, because there you've got to seek input. You've got to go out and you've got to invite, your parents, your students, if you're a secondary school especially, your boards, your councils, your ministry leaders, your alums, your parent leaders. You've got to invite them and basically say, here are the items we're thinking about. This is what we're thinking about. And basically with that in mind, ask them several questions. How do you feel about this direction? Number 2, do you think people will support this? Number 3, any advice that you would give to our steering committee that's leading this charge? From there, you then take all those questions you hear in those sessions, create a Q&A booklet, and then send it out to everyone and have them take a survey where then they can rank in priority order. And you can ask them very simple questions. Please rank in priority order 1, 2, 3, 4 these items. Number 2, if a campaign was launched, Number 2, how do you feel about launching a campaign here at Our Lady Perpetual Help Parish and School? Very favorable, not favorable at all. Question number 3. This is in a survey, in pew and sent home to the school families. I'm using them as an example. Question number 3. Would you financially support a capital campaign to fund these particular case points here at this parish and school? Yes or no? Yes, no. Okay. Number 4, would you consider being a campaign organizational leader, and then in parentheses saying chairing a division, hosting a reception, delivering packets, helping with mail outs, etc., here, and, yes or no. And that's it. That survey can be answered either online, in pew, sent, home to school families, and that survey gives you wonderful data. Okay. So that light goes green when you've sought the input and received the input, okay? For this particular parish that I'm writing this feasibility study for this weekend, the survey and the input listening sessions, okay, basically that amounted to 645 people. Now the parish is approximately 1,000. So we feel real good about that data. Not good in terms of what it said, but just the numbers of people. We feel good about having that many people involved. All right, so then light 4 says, let's create renderings, with an architect, and let's create a case statement that says why we're planning to do this. And then let's take a look at our financial leaders, and that would mean if you're using outside counsel, we would ask the principal, the pastor, the president, whomever, would you please come up with an alphabetized list of your top 100 financial leaders from all bases, all bases. If you're parish elementary school, parishioners, parents. If you're high school, secondary, pre-K through 12, parents and alums and past donors and board members, who are they? And then primarily outside counsel conducts the feasibility study interviews. We don't feel comfortable unless we have personally interviewed somewhere around 45 to 65 people one-on-one. And here are the questions. I'll give them to you right now. Number one is, if you had to give this particular Catholic school a rating, of outstanding, above average, average, below average, in terms of how it services your needs and in terms of how you feel about this school based upon your experiences, what rating would you give it? Outstanding, above average, below average, average, below average, or NA for don't care to comment. Okay. Question number two. In terms of the proposed building project or capital campaign, what would be your stance in terms of moving forward? Would you say that you'd be very favorable, favorable, not favorable at all? Answer. You're seeking, qualifications under all those answers. Next question. In terms of your participation, now watch how this is worded, because in the feasibility study interviews, we're not asking for money. And we have to be very careful if you're using outside counsel, they have to be very careful that they don't offend anyone. And so therefore, in terms of phrasing it, best way to have it phrased, and you could ask that, if you're going to use an outside company, you can ask them, hey, how do you ask that question? Well, we recommend this. Okay, Mr. Johnson, as we take a look at your participation, if any, in this campaign, there's an A and a B question. The A question is volunteer organizational leadership. Is this something that you would consider, you and your wife consider doing in terms of volunteer organization leadership? Maybe hosting a reception, maybe delivering packets, maybe helping with the mail outs, etc. Sharing something. Okay. All right. Yes or no. All right. In terms of financial participation, Mr. Johnson and Ms. Johnson, you see in front of you, there are a 5 or 6 categories. Category A, as you can see, says $100,000 and above. Category B says $50,000 to $100,000. Category C says $25,000 to $50,000. Category D says $10,000 to $25,000. Category E says $5,000 to $10,000, and category F says below $5,000. Now, as you look at those categories, and when it came time for you to consider a financial gift, if any, that you were going to make to this campaign, are there 1 or 2 categories here that you and your family would possibly talk about and say, more than likely, we probably would consider this category and this category? Okay? Very non-threatening way to ask the question. And they will check 1 or 2 categories. Okay? Next question. Have you ever considered a planned gift for Our Lady of Perpetual Help Parish and School? Usually the answer is no. If the answer is no, is this something that you quite possibly would consider in the future? Yes, no, possibly. Now, right there, what we find interesting is that the feasibility study interviews allow you, right then and there, to identify almost 40% of the people that you're interviewing as possible plan giving potential. What a wonderful opportunity that can present itself. Okay, next question. In terms of folks that you think would be great to head up and lead and chair this campaign, do you have any suggestions of people that if you knew they were chairing this campaign, you would say, my goodness, this high school has the right people chairing it? Any names come to mind? Usually we average between 3 and 5 suggestions. Okay, next question. Mr. Johnson, are y'all aware of any major fundraising campaigns in the area that would conflict with a campaign done here at this high school? Once again, wanting to know if the donors are going to be invited to other campaigns in that one. And then the last question. In terms of our role, obviously our advantage is being objective. Disadvantage would be the fact we're not here every day. So is there anything you think is important for us to understand about the school, about the community, about the history, about the culture? In other words, where you would say, gosh, I really need to let these people know this about our school. Now, those are the questions that we ask in a feasibility study. And notice what we get. Remember what I said 30 minutes ago? I said, if you don't do a feasibility study,
gosh, you're really missing out on a lot of really good information. Now, hopefully you see why. Because not only am I getting how they feel about the school, but I'm also getting how they feel about the campaign. I'm also getting about whether or not they would be a volunteer campaign leader. I'm also putting them into some kind of category. And if they said, you know, category E and F, then I'm going to put them in the lower one. Okay. All right. And I'm also getting their recommendations for campaign leaders. And I'm getting whether or not they would consider planned giving. And I'm seeing if they know of any other campaigns in the area. And I'm getting attitudinal information on the last question. All of this is so very important to have. And so in stoplight number 5 that's on the screen, you know, that becomes important. Stoplight number 6 is when you organize the campaign. Stoplight number 7 is when you run what we call the silent phase of the campaign. Okay, the silent phase. Like right now, we are working with a high school in the Baltimore Archdiocese, and their goal, you know, is in terms of moving forward, is a $5 million campaign, and we want to be at 3.5 million before we launch the public phase. And they're on track to do that. I was there with them Monday night, and they're on track to do that. So once again, becomes really important that that piece, you know, be in place and the silent phase go below the radar. You're primarily seeking, you know, to move forward with something that where you can announce the public phase and you can say we're already 70% or 60% or 65%, you know, or 70%, you know, to our goal as you launch the public phase. Really important. Okay. Then the public phase kicks off where everybody's invited. Everyone's invited. And then you do your wrap up, your follow up. We kind of call it Operation Homestretch. So I know I've spent a lot of time on this traffic light, but I think the traffic light is really important, you know, for you to understand. I think the traffic light, and I'm sending you a copy of this. That's one of the things I'll be sending you at the end of this class, but I think it's really important. So let's move forward. Okay. So in the feasibility study, you know, this is what we've been talking about. So I'm going to kind of move on through this pretty quickly. All right. You got the steering committee. You've established your major threads. Those are your case points. The case points are agreed upon by school leaders, number 3. Making sure, you know, like the demographic data, if you're going to do something in a Catholic school, you know, they're going to be people that are going to say, wait a minute, you're getting ready to build this new multipurpose building. You're getting ready to build this new science wing. You're getting ready to build these new classrooms. What demographic data do you have that will support the fact that you will have students in this school for the next 10 years? So make sure you do your homework there. Okay. We've been fortunate in the fact that one of the things in the steering committee we always recommend is that we get somebody from the County Planning Commission, somebody from the Chamber of Commerce, you know, and hopefully we can find those connections. So you're going to finalize the case points. As I mentioned, we're still in the feasibility stage now, exploration, discovery, feasibility. You're going to get that Q&A booklet. I want the Q&A booklet to go out before number 7, where they take the survey. Why? Because I want people to see the value of a Q&A is that you can state what questions you're hearing out in the community, number 1. But guess what? You can write the answers that you want to write, the way they should be answered. Not the way somebody else is answering them, you know? So as you look at it, for example, one question we hear all the time, before the survey and all in those input sessions, well, how much is the diocese going to give us? Well, folks, I don't know about your diocese, but I've worked in many of them across the country. I have not seen a lot of dioceses that will fund something unless it's very special, okay? Like maybe a new Catholic high school. So as you look at it and you deal with it, I think it's important that you realize that you want to answer some questions. So maybe one of the questions in the Q&A booklet is, what kind of support will we get from the Archdiocese or from the diocese? And maybe the answer that you need to have that, so everybody can see it, is the diocese, in terms of financial support, the diocese will not be supporting this campaign. They have other campaigns, I'm sure that do ask them, but they do give us support in the sense of verbally supporting the campaign and also being testimonies for our, giving testimonies for our school, but also the building committee of the diocese works very closely with us and our building committee to make sure that everything we're doing on the facility end, everything is done right in terms of things going out to bid, things being done correctly with contractors, GCs, and all that type of stuff. So, you know, that's an example of a question that needs to be answered correctly. Okay, so they take the survey, and then the feasibility study number 9 is done. And then usually the outside counsel, if you're using, is going to make the recommendation to move forward or not. If yes, then you move to campaign organization, get the necessary approvals. And basically with campaign organization, you know, here is what we like to see. We like, this is us now, this is we rather, being an English teacher, I should not have said that. We like 5 operational chair couples in the perfect world. And the reason why we like that instead of 1 or 2 is because it allows a lot of unity, a lot of sharing of ideas, a lot of people, and especially if the spouse is out of town, the other spouse quite possibly can be there. So we really like that a lot. That model we've been using the last 8 years, and it has really been successful. Really been successful. And many times these folks come from the steering committee that started it all. You know, I'll just give a shout out to, you know, to 2 schools that I think are taking this class right now. One, St. Ursula Academy in Cincinnati. They're operational chairs. That campaign, all-girls school, downtown Cincinnati, I mean, inner city Cincinnati, outstanding leadership, board leadership. They're operational chairs, second to none. Those people were unbelievable. Advancement office, unbelievable. They had it all going. You talk about leadership, that's leadership. Right now, organizing a campaign up in Indianapolis, it's a Cena Memorial. The president has put in actually, you know, 5 operational chair couples, met with them last week. They're right on track. Advancement office support, campaign coordinator in place, president on track, on board. You know, you've really got that piece is solid. And that's why I'm spending a few minutes on it, because when you have your operational chair couples solid, you know, then you know you've got an executive committee made up of your operational chairs, your administration, and your advancement personnel, whether that's 1 people or 2 people or a part-timer, whatever, you know, you've got that going on. Down at Our Lady of the Gulf, down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, they don't have a development office, and so they have a part-time campaign coordinator. Jean is the part-time campaign coordinator. She's doing a great job getting the database, organizing the meetings, sending out emails, and communicating with those leaders. Honorary chairs, if applicable. Honorary chairs, basically, we're asking them to do 3 things: lend their name to the campaign, attend 1 or 2 key events, and quite possibly identify, you know, people that we should be talking with. Then we have our pace setter divisions. Those are the special lead, major, and leadership. Then we have our public divisions, the parents, alums, friends, which would be past parent, grandparents, and business community. Then we have the new parent gift division that kicks off after everything else is done. Then, these are the steps. Now we're in the organization. The database is squared away. Campaign leaders, you know, are discussing things like, do you want gift-giving divisions? What do we do with naming opportunities? What are our campaign materials going to look like? What are we going to do with messaging and theme and all that good stuff? You know, are we going to have a campaign office, or is our advancement office going to serve with that? Do we need to bring a campaign coordinator come in? You know, to come in, do we need to recruit teams, you know, for all these divisions? How, you know, we got to make sure we get everybody trained and everybody on the same page, speaking the same language. We got to create these materials. We want to make sure we have a campaign prayer, a campaign video, pocket folder, a good brochure, good Q&A, a letter of intent, you know, all this type of stuff that you're ready. All right, now, oftentimes when I talk about this and like this, I'll have people say, wait a minute, look at all this stuff. And I say, wait a minute, just time out. Let us say that you are Mountain to Sales Academy. And let us say you are going to seek to raise $5 million, all right? Now, let's put that in the business world. Let's say you and I decided that we were going to start a business. And this business that we were getting ready to start is a business that we wanted in 5 years to make a net profit of $5 million. A net, not gross, We're talking about net profit of $5 million in 5 years. Now, if we were starting a business like this today, what would we have to make sure we had in place? Well, we'd have to have a mission. We'd have to have good case points. We'd have to have a business plan. We'd have to have a financial plan. We would have to have the right materials. We'd have to have the right personnel. In other words, we would have to have in place the right infrastructure in order for our campaign or our particular project to raise $5 million in this business, in order for our business to be successful. That's no different than this. That's no different than this. You're saying with a capital campaign, on top of everything else we're doing, we want to raise this additional money in terms of net profit. So a lot goes into it. A lot goes into it. And you're setting up in the organizational phase, the proper accounting and communication, you're hosting receptions, and all this is in the solid phase. And that brings us to step 23. And I always say, if your campaign can be close to 60 to 70% of the goal, by the end of the solid phase, then that's wonderful. That's wonderful. That's where you want to be. Then you kick off the public phase, and this is a lot of participatory giving. These are all your alums. These are your past parents. These are your parents. These are, as long, once again, what trumps everything is those in the special lead, major, and leadership. If a parent is capable of considering a $50,000 gift, they're not invited in the parent division. They're put in the lead gift division. Okay? So the public gift division are those parents, alums, past parents, grandparents who are not in the special lead, major, and leadership divisions. Okay? So the public phase kicks off usually with a lot of media coverage, a lot of social media, a lot of website, and basically they reach on out and with parents, alums, friends, business community, and get them started, and then they implement all kinds of receptions and kickoffs and visits and things of this nature. It's something that, once again, we strongly believe that in order to do it right, you've got to do this as much personal as you possibly can. Really, really important that we take a look at that. Okay? Let me share a really interesting statistic. I mentioned Monday that I was up in Baltimore, and in this one Catholic high school, they have received actually 94 gifts, to the capital campaign. 12 of those gifts were people that just said, "Oh, I'll just send it in. There's no need for me to come in, no need to visit." And as much as they tried, that's what they did. Now, what is interesting is that 82 of those gifts that came in were people that came either to the school or they came to a reception, but they had a conversation at length, meaning 20, 30 minutes, with the principal and or the advancement director and or an op chair. They had a personal conversation and they were personally invited to participate. Those people, those people, 100% asked to pledge ratio. Meaning that if they were invited to consider a gift in the range between $25,000 and $50,000, they came in between $25,000 and $50,000. Just because they came in at 50, we don't inflate that and make that 200%. But if invited to participate in that range of $25,000 to $50,000, and they came in, let us say, at 10%, at $10,000, that's a 40% ask to pledge ratio. Healthy campaigns stay above 70%. These folks were 100%. Why? Eyeball to eyeball. That's the way campaigns are built. And then finally you move into your home stretch phase, and your home stretch phase basically wraps everything up, making sure everyone has participated, celebrating success, and then phasing back into a vibrant development advancement effort. Now, as I said, in terms of this capital campaign concept, I think it really is important that we understand that it does take time. This is not something that, we're going to do a campaign. I'm always, kind of just I'll just use the word amazed at those people that say, well, the board says we need to launch a campaign this year. So believe it or not, we get at least 1 or 2 calls a month, and basically they say, hey, could you come and we want to kick off a capital campaign, and could you come and talk about how we could do something with you on this? And my question always is, well, where are you in the process? Well, we need to raise $10 million and we'd like to kick it off here in the next few months. And I'm like, whoa. So hopefully, as we look at this, everything we're laying down right now in these previous 8 lessons, is all part of the same philosophy. This is all organization. This is all, let's go back to the first class where we said development is the meaningful involvement of people in your mission and vision for the future. If you should be able to see that theme, that mission right here in all these slides we just got finished covering. Planned giving, and capital giving, meaning the capital campaign, can fuel endowment growth like you've never seen. And so in terms of your endowment, right now, I mentioned a campaign earlier at Jesuit High School. This is actually a $20 million campaign we're directing. And of that $20 million, $5 million is going to go to their endowment fund, and their endowment fund is specifically for tuition assistance. And that tuition assistance is to allow people that qualify and become members of that student body that qualify character-wise, academically, every other which way, in terms of being able to be successful. And it's quite remarkable what's done at that school. And so in terms of this, their goal is to build that endowment, and so they can use it for tuition assistance. And so the ways Catholic schools have funded their endowment they've funded it through a percentage of the capital campaign. In this particular case, this particular campaign, there are primarily 4 or 5 components, and so 20% of this campaign is going to endowment. Funding the endowment as maybe one of the case points of the campaign. That's what this is. Planned giving growth. Boy, that is so key. And in the book, 25 Lessons Learned, on page 109, there are 15 steps that I really encourage you to look at. We will not have a homework assignment about it, but I really encourage you to look at that, because if you don't have a planned giving process in place, and notice what I said earlier when we were conducting the feasibility study questions, I was sharing with you those questions. Notice those questions. So if you're going to use outside counsel, to do a feasibility study, please make sure you ask them, do you ask questions about planned giving here? What a wonderful opportunity that you have to be able to ask that question, because after the campaign, that's the next step. Capital giver, annual givers become capital givers, become planned and deferred giving givers. So, and then some fund a endowment through a percentage of the annual giving. So as you look at this 15-step process, to establish a vibrant planned giving process, look on page 109. And so on page 109 are these 15 steps. And if you do not have something like this in place, here is my suggestion. And let me show you how beautifully this fits in to what we've been talking about here over the last 4 to 5 months. Let's look at step 1. Step 1, establish the Planned Giving Council. Folks, this can be a subcommittee of the core team. Maybe 2 members of the core team build this particular as a subcommittee. They get 6 or 7 or 8 other people involved, and that's a subcommittee of that core team. We have a number of schools that have worked it that way. The core team then becomes the core, the root of all this, And so then they can move through as many of these 15 steps as possible, and you don't have to do all 15. As you can tell, there's some you may want to skip, there's some you may want to combine, but above all, this 15-step process does allow you to set up a vibrant planned giving effort, where you're always inviting people to participate, always inviting people to participate, So as you look at this, I think, with planned giving, sometimes we make it more complicated than it really should be. and I'm gonna share this story with you because I think it's a pretty good one. My dad, God bless his soul, lived to be 98 years old, and he died back in 2001. And when we celebrated his 90th birthday, there was about 15 people over and family and a few friends, and he announced at the dining room table, after we get ready to all eat, and he said, after we finished eating, he said, I just want to let y'all know that I'm leaving $50,000 to Christ Church Episcopal. And everybody kind of looked at each other and said, oh, okay. Now, I was raised Episcopal up until the age of 21, and then I converted to the Roman Catholic faith. Dad never really understood what I did, when I got involved in this work. But I eased on over to him that evening, and I said, Dad, I think that's wonderful. I said, but, just kind of fill me in a little bit of what drove you to that decision to leave $50,000 in your will to your church? He said, I got to thinking, I said, your mother and I were married in the church. You and your brother were baptized in the church and confirmed in the church. We went to church there all during y'all's childhood. Mother has passed on. I figured, your brother and y'all don't need any money. Of course, I laughed at that. And he said, so why wouldn't I? I said, no, listen, Dad, I think that is magnificent. I said, what I'm trying to get at is what made you say, hey, I'm going to do this. Well, Father Bob used to come out, twice a year and visit me in my home, and I'd always cook dinner. He always liked my Tennessee cooking, and I always did some ham and grits and turnip greens and cornbread. And my dad was a great cook. And he said, I said last time he was out there, maybe not long ago, he said my dad's nickname was Dude, D-U-D-E. And so he said, he looked at me, he said, Dude, have you ever thought about leaving anything in your will to Christ Church Episcopal? And Dad said, I looked at Father Bob. I said, Father Bob, no, I don't think I ever have. I said, that was it? He said, yeah, why? I said, you mean no will seminar? No brochure on how to do your will? No workshop to attend? He said, no. He said, Frank, you have to understand, this is our spiritual home, and your mother and I, we buried her here, and you're going to bury me here, and this is something that we feel strongly about. But what struck me the most was that I don't know that Dad would have made that gift had not someone invited him to do that. That's my point. That's my point. And so as you talk about all these plan giving seminars and workshops and brochures and all this charitable remainder trust and uni trust and gift annuities and all this type of stuff, I always kind of go back to my father. And I always said, somebody was smart enough to say to him, hey, dude, have you ever thought about considering a gift in your will to this church? And we can do the same thing for our Catholic schools. So I don't mean to simplify it, but in a way I do mean to simplify it because, if you read that lesson 23, I think you'll see a bunch of steps. But at the bottom line is someone needs to invite. And I think that invitation becomes really key. So as we talk about this and wrap things up, do understand the steps that it takes. That second sentence in the first bullet point, in the sub-bullet point, there really are not a lot of second chances once you kick a campaign off. There really are not. And please don't move forward unless you've done a feasibility study. And as we said, annual giving impacts capital, which impacts planned and endowed. At the heart of these are the one-on-one relationships you build with your donors. So as we noted at the last one, just want to put this slide up there. Our last class is going to be Thursday, December 21st. We're going to talk about being open to change and shifts in thinking, exploring new sources of revenue with a proactive stance, and then some parting thoughts. And then as we move from this class with this weekend, I will send you the PDF of the PowerPoint, the YouTube video link, the video, the go-to link for the class on the 21st. There's some resource materials primarily on capital campaigns I'm going to send you. And then your homework is your final exam, which is due on the 31st. And here's your final exam. I've already emailed it to you, but, I just want you to be aware of it, based upon all of this that we've covered. Please write a detailed description of what guidance you would give to a Catholic school. That could be an elementary, a secondary, or a pre-K through 12. It's your choice, whichever of those you want to pick. But please indicate which one you're talking about in order to establish a vibrant Catholic school development advancement system. All right. Please consider, this type of thing. What would be the mission? What structure would you set up? What kind of personnel would you recommend? How are they going to continue to professionally grow? What about key and needed processes? What about evaluating and assessing? And notice, with this in mind, the administration and board have given that school $50,000 for the first year in order to establish this effort. So that could go to personnel, and obviously that's not a lot of money. I get that. I understand that. But yet in some cases, that's an awful lot of money. And then number 2 of your final exam is, as you move into January 2018 and the next 6 months, meaning this fiscal year, of your Catholic school development advancement efforts, please explain how you will be able to apply what you've learned in this class to your present efforts. So that's your final exam project, and we'd like to have it in by December 31st. And then also, as we sent to you, we're planning on the University of Dayton ISPD Summer Institute, June 26th and 27th. We're planning on an evening reception on the 25th. This will be on the University of Dayton campus, open only to you and those students that have taken this course. We have 60 spots, 60 seats. If you're interested, please email me. That's not a commitment, but that does let us know that you're interested. And that should pretty much do it. I know we're a couple of minutes over time. Let's see, a couple of questions. Yeah, have you ever been, face-to-face invitation? Yeah, I tell you what, we're going to spend some time on that in the next lesson. Actually, I'm going to share with you inviting people person-to-person, face-to-face to financially give. There are so many ways, wrong that people do it. We find there's several ways that really are easy to do. It's not pressure. You're not going to turn anybody off. It is a way to do it. So we're gonna cover that in the next class for sure. We're gonna do that. Okay. Enjoyed it a little bit over time. If there's anything specific you want me to answer, just give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'll be glad to answer it. Looking forward to the last class on the 21st. Please, there's a short survey that'll come up. Please answer that short survey. And then obviously, as we take a look at moving on to the rest of the day, hopefully you're having a blessed Advent. And here on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, we certainly want to acknowledge that. And once again, thank you for joining us. We've had a number of people that have been with us today. Once again, good luck with everything, and we will talk with you soon.